Right, thanks for sticking with me. Hopefully you just did that breathwork routine. If not, maybe start with that or finish this episode with going back to that one and doing that breathwork routine. Biomarkers. That's something I want to talk about. Biomarkers. So when I say biomarkers, I really mean negative biomarkers. So what are some things that would be red flags? Erratic sleep, getting sick often, right? All different types of sicknesses. Um, Sickness is really, again, if you don't think you can get sick, you can't really catch someone's sickness. What happens is it spreads to you and then generates within you based on the thoughts and the energy that you're putting towards it. So you're either feeding your sickness or not. And that's, again, what every single moment of your life, you're either feeding your sicknesses or not, right? We all have specific sicknesses, right? We all have a weak point in our DNA. It doesn't mean that our DNA is weak. It just means that it has a weakest point, everyone, right? And then in that weakest point is where stress can navigate to and cause all types of breaks, right? So someone who has depression or schizophrenia or anxiety or anything, right? That is a point in their DNA that's specific to them where they have their weakest point, and that's where stress really essentially creates a break in that point in the DNA helix, and it either is getting repaired or it's getting further. It's getting destroyed further or it's getting repaired. And still, even today, 2023, many people will tell you there's nothing you can do, right? That's the number one thing I hear with cancer, right? Cancer is, again, a weak point in your DNA where stress has pooled and has attacked and has infiltrated your system. And cancer is just dead cells, right? It's just point where cells have essentially been corrupted. It's like a scratch on a disc, and that scratch disc is replicating rather than a clean disc, right? So that's really the difference. And you can continue to scratch that disc, right? And you can feed that scratch, right? And that's really where it's everything that's like, it's either good for you or it's bad for you, right? So if your disc is scratched, right, or you don't want your disc to get scratched, then the things that are bad for you, like going to bed late, not sleeping enough, overeating, eating junk food, not exercising, right? That's contributing to the scratch, right? So, or that's what cancer eats, right? That's what depression eats. That's what anxiety eats. That's what schizophrenia eats, right? It eats the negative, right? So you can starve that out, right? Fasting, or you can feed the good, right? So let's say, you're eating fruits, you're eating vegetables, you're getting all your daily vitamins, right? You're leveling out all possible deficiencies that you could have. So then you're feeding your clean disc, right? So even if your disc is scratched, you can contribute to getting it clean. And if your disc is clean, you can work on keeping it clean, right? That's prevention. So biomarkers to look for: erratic sleep. Many people have huge issues with sleep. We've talked about blue light and the amount of time that people are consuming blue light per day is, there's certain stats that say people spend like 11 hours per day on their phone. I don't know how that's possible. Doesn't make any sense to me, but let's say it's not just their phone. Let's say it's the laptop or the computer at work. Let's say it's the TV at home, right? These lights are not good for us. They're just not. We have not evolved with them, and they are corrupting us. They are scratching our disc. And again, it's all about mentality, right? It's all about how you frame it. If you're framing it in a certain type of way, then you could be untouchable. But most people are not even aware of their thoughts, let alone have the ability to intervene in them. Most people are completely identified with their thoughts, which is the ego. So you're 100% identified with your egoic voice, which is just one of many voices. So people are 100% identified with their thoughts, and they believe they are their thoughts. They believe that's them speaking. And it sounds like you. So it can be very deceiving, right? The ego is characterized as a trickster, and it can make you believe that that's you, and it just isn't. It truly is not. There's many different ways in which you can get to thoughtlessness, or ways that you can intervene and control your thoughts, right? Or you can just observe them until they kind of die out, right? By putting that direct attention on them, putting them under the magnifying glass, you say, what really is this? And let the mind play out and watch it, observe. And that really is giving the true you the power, right? The true you is the space between thoughts. Now, you could definitely see a problem there, right? The true you is the space between thoughts. Most people don't have any space between thoughts. You really only have one thought at a time. Most people have over 100,000 thoughts, and they feel like they're having more than one thought at a time. So there's no space for you. There's just your constant thoughts, right? And what is the basis for that? And the ego doesn't want you to have space between thoughts. The ego wants you to identify with it fully, because it thinks that it knows what's best for you. It knows how to keep you safe, and really it's just basing that on past events. It catastrophizes the future and tries to get you to continue to do what you have habitually done in the past, right? Because you're still alive, right? So that must be good. So just continue doing what you're doing. It doesn't matter how you're feeling. If you're feeling depressed, anxious, whatever, just keep doing what you're doing, because you're alive. The ego is keeping you alive. And then what happens is you become defensive over your thoughts. So the ego begins to defend itself. And any time that it's challenged, or any time that it hears something it doesn't agree with, it automatically formulates an opinion and becomes very opinionated and starts to defend everything. Even though most people's thoughts, right, they just come up with an opinion 5 seconds ago, and they didn't have an opinion on something until they heard somebody else's opinion. Then they formulate that opinion on the spot, and they're willing to die for it, right? That's the ego. And that is the ego has a purpose. It's not, there's nothing wrong with the ego. There's only something wrong with identifying with the ego. And the ego is the source of all suffering. The ego has us fighting wars. The ego has us have, hundreds of thousands of people starve every year, and it has us just focus on what we're focusing on. It has millions of people are homeless. Just focus on what you're focusing on. That's the ego, right? The ego has you late night snacking. The ego has you not exercising. The ego is a self-saboteur, and no one can do it better, right? So often also people are considered successful. They are 100% ego based, and really what is driving them to that success is the ego. It's the I'll prove you wrong, I'll prove you all wrong, I will I will overcompensate for my previous deficiencies with whatever success, right? And most people say that the most miserable people are actually the people who are the richest in the world, right? Because they have allowed their ego to drive them to such gain. And once they have everything that they ever wanted, they realize they're still the same person that they used to be. And that was really where the attention could have went to, where instead of improving themselves or changing what they didn't like about themselves, they just changed their external, and their internal remains the same. So then, people who have everything end up being the biggest, drug abusers and things of that particular nature. So then they're looking to escape reality. So, space between thoughts, the only way to really get there is through breathing. One thing I just talked about is adrenaline boosts your immune system, right? So that's a good place to start and to intervene. Is you want to produce adrenaline, you want to produce epinephrine, and particularly norepinephrine, which is adrenaline localized in your brain. So that's where you see a lot of the benefits for the immune system. You see a lot of mood enhancement. And that's even if you can go to that when you're feeling run down, you can go to that when you're feeling sick. But more importantly, you can go to that every day as a preventative measure, a couple of sets and different reps, and really whatever you can get yourself to do, right? We're talking about full breaths, and you can kind of reverse engineer it to what is it that's going to make you feel hot, right? What's going to make you feel like you just got a workout in, like you just ran. That's the kind of breathing you want to get to, that pace, right? It's not that easy for me to kind of convey it because it's a really person dependent experience, and it's also without the feedback of the person being in front of me, it's not an easy thing to say, I don't know how you're doing it. I don't know if you're doing it right, if you're doing it wrong, how you can increase, how you can make it better. So it really is something that you can experiment with, and you can watch videos and learn how to do it if it's something you're interested in. Or you can immerse yourself in cold, right? Cold exposure is so good for regulating your breathing because most people aren't trained enough to really regulate their breathing in that moment of the spike of adrenaline. So just getting yourself into an ice bath for 20 seconds or getting yourself to take a 20-second cold shower, that will boost your immune system. And that is the game you want to play. Like everything you're doing is either boosting your immune system or keeping it status quo, keeping it the same, or lowering your immune system. And for the most part, people are participating in things daily that lower their immune system, especially in our culture, right? But culture is something that is something you can participate in or not, something that you can create. You can create the culture of your own household. You can create the culture of your own life. You have to lead by example and do these things, and other people will see you doing them. You can't talk about it first. You have to do it first. And then maybe slowly people will begin to get on your program. So it does come down to individual accountability and responsibility. And I think it is something that you want to be responsible for, right? Because what is the word responsibility? It's the ability to have a response. So instead of being unresponsive, you want to be responsive. You can take control of these things. You can take action on these things. Everything I've talked about is extremely tangible. It is within an arm's distance, and it's within a 24-hour change of mentality. So I really believe that you can do it. And I think, and I know that there are many people who are doing it. I've had many people reach out to me and show their appreciation. And I really appreciate that. I really am glad that I can have any kind of impact. And I will continue to, unveil behind the curtain and show you more of my life and the things that work for me and the things that I highly recommend. And like I said, I will I won't recommend anything that I don't do personally, that I don't have personal experience with, that does isn't data driven, and things that I've done. I really won't recommend anything to you that I haven't been doing for the last 4 years plus. There's plenty of things that I experiment with now to see how it's working, but that's my own experiment. Once I have my own information, I will then convey that. So again, thank you so much for watching. I'm a broken record, but I really do appreciate it. And I wish you all the best in health. Have a great day and talk soon. Peace.